Imagine you could choose who you love. No accidental feelings, no inconvenient timing, no lying awake at 2 a.m. thinking about someone you have absolutely no business thinking about. You just look at a person, evaluate rationally, decide yes or no, and move on with your life like a normal person. Sounds incredible. Completely impossible. And by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why. Because the real reason you can't choose who you love is stranger and more fascinating than anything you've been told. It starts with a moment most people have experienced and nobody can fully explain. You meet someone. Could be anywhere. A party. A coffee shop. A completely ordinary Tuesday afternoon when nothing special was supposed to happen. And something shifts. You don't decide it. You don't plan it. It just happens, somewhere beneath the surface, before a single conscious thought has formed. Scientists call this pre-conscious attraction, and it happens faster than you can blink. Research shows the brain begins evaluating a potential romantic partner within the first fraction of a second. Not minutes, not after a conversation, a fraction of a second. By the time you think they seem interesting, your brain has already processed thousands of signals you never had access to. Symmetry, scent, micro-expressions, vocal tone, the way they move across a room. You think you're just noticing someone. Your brain has already filed a 12-page report. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Logic doesn't get a vote. Not in that moment. Not in most moments that actually matter. Picture someone sitting down to approach this seriously. A spreadsheet, a literal list, ideal height, ambition level, sense of humor, compatible values, 5-year plan alignment. They are very proud of this list. They have color-coded it. Then they meet someone who matches none of it, and the list gets quietly set on fire. The color coding does not help. This isn't weakness. This is your brain operating exactly as designed, using a system far older and far more powerful than conscious thought. The part of your brain responsible for attraction isn't the part that makes spreadsheets. It's the part that kept your ancestors alive for 200,000 years. And that part has never once read anyone's notes. Now, here's something that genuinely surprised researchers when they first discovered it. You are statistically more likely to fall for someone you've simply been around before, even if you've never spoken to them, even if you don't know their name. This is called the mere exposure effect, and it works completely below the level of awareness. Here's how it plays out in real life. Someone starts a new job. There's a person in the office they don't think much about. They're just there. Background, furniture, basically. 6 weeks later, that person smiles at them in the hallway. One smile. That's it. That's the entire event. And something happens that makes absolutely no sense given the available evidence. The brain has been quietly building a file the entire time, logging appearances, registering presence, filing this person under familiar, known, safe, and at some point, familiar starts to feel like something else entirely, which means you can be in the early stages of falling for someone before you are remotely aware it's happening. And that's not even close to the strangest part. Psychologists have found that the attachment patterns you developed before age 5, the way you learned to connect with the people who cared for you as a child, follow you into every romantic relationship you will ever have. If comfort felt warm and consistent, you tend to seek warmth and consistency. If love felt unpredictable, something in your system may interpret unpredictability as familiar, as normal, even as a sign that the feelings are real. Which means some people spend years chasing a feeling that was never comfort and wondering why the people who are genuinely good to them never quite feel like enough. This is called attachment theory, and it means the template for who you fall for was partly written before you were old enough to have an opinion about it. Nobody handed you this blueprint. You didn't choose it. It was assembled from thousands of small experiences before your conscious mind had any say in the matter. Picture tiny workers inside a child's brain, taking notes, filing patterns, building a preference model. The child has absolutely no idea this is happening. The child is busy with crayons. 20 years later, that adult meets someone and feels an inexplicable pull and thinks, I don't know why, but something about them just feels right. The workers nod. They've been waiting for this. Now let's talk about something that's going to make a lot of deeply uncomfortable sense. Mystery makes attraction stronger. Not familiarity alone, uncertainty, There's a reason that knowing exactly how someone feels about you, immediately and completely, can sometimes deflate the feeling almost instantly. And there's a reason that not knowing can make you think about someone constantly for days. Researchers studying the brain during early attraction found that dopamine fires more intensely when the outcome is uncertain. Your brain doesn't just want the reward, it becomes consumed by the possibility of the reward. It's the same mechanism that makes a slot machine more compelling than a vending machine. The vending machine always gives you what you paid for. The slot machine might. And that might is what keeps people there long past when they intended to leave. Casinos know this. Your brain knows this. You are the last to find out. You think you're falling for a person. You are also falling for the not knowing. And the brain will dedicate serious resources to both. Have you ever had feelings you were certain would pass and they just didn't? Someone you tried to logic yourself out of, made a very rational case against, and then thought about on the drive home anyway? That's the system doing precisely what it was built to do, and it is completely unimpressed by your reasoning. Now here's the part that explains something almost everyone has felt, but most people find embarrassing to admit. Why do we so often want people we can't have? Not every time, but consistently enough that it cannot be a coincidence. When something is unavailable, the brain registers it as scarce, and scarcity triggers a very specific ancient response. Pay attention. Pursue this. Do not let this get away. The brain was not built for modern dating apps and unlimited options. It was built for a world where viable partners were few, opportunities were rare, and hesitation had real consequences. So when someone seems just out of reach or pulls away slightly, part of your brain immediately files them under. Rare, high value, worth significant effort. The wanting intensifies. Not because they're more compatible, not because they're objectively better for you, but because your 200,000-year-old threat detection system just flagged a potential loss. You're not irrational for feeling this. You're running ancient software on a very modern problem. And now, the hardest part to explain, and the hardest to sit with. Heartbreak. Not the general sadness of something ending. The specific, almost physical impossibility of stopping thoughts about someone even when every part of you wants to. You know it's over. You've processed it. You've talked it through. You have technically made peace with it somewhere between 11 and 17 times. You wrote it in your journal. You told your friends. You meant it every single time. And then it's 3 a.m. And there they are. Brain imaging studies have confirmed something that might reframe how you think about this entirely. The pain of romantic rejection activates the same neural regions as physical pain, not as a metaphor, the same regions. The ones that fire when you break a bone or burn your hand. When people say heartbreak hurts, they are being more literally accurate than they realize. And the obsessive thinking that follows, researchers found it operates through the same craving pathways activated by substance addiction. The brain doesn't distinguish between missing someone you loved and craving something you were dependent on. The chemistry is nearly identical, which means getting over someone is not just an emotional process. It is closer to a withdrawal from a substance your brain had classified as necessary. The part of your brain running your reward system did not receive a notification that the relationship ended. It only knows that something it had categorized as important is now gone, and it wants it back. This is why willpower doesn't work. This is why being busy doesn't work. Not really. This is why everyone who has ever said just stop thinking about them has never actually stopped thinking about them on command. Time works. Because time is the only thing that actually lets the system recalibrate. Everything else is just waiting in a more structured way. Now here's where everything starts to connect. The brain doesn't process love the way it processes ordinary decisions. Researchers who scanned the brains of people looking at photos of someone they were deeply in love with found something remarkable. The rational regions, the ones responsible for critical thinking, risk assessment, and judgment, went quieter, not more active. Quieter. Love doesn't sharpen your reasoning. In measurable, documented ways, it temporarily softens it. This is why people in love overlook things they'd normally catch immediately. Why the feeling of absolute certainty about someone can be so complete even when the actual evidence is thin. Why people who are otherwise thoughtful and careful make decisions that their future selves will spend years trying to understand. The brain isn't broken in those moments. It's just treating love the way it treats survival. which means it's not leaving the decision to the rational department. And here's the final piece, the one that ties everything else together. The most disorienting thing about love isn't the falling. It's the moment you realize, sometimes years in, that you didn't actually choose it. You can choose to act on feelings. You can choose to stay or go. You can choose how you treat someone and what you build together. Those choices are real and they matter. But the feeling itself, the specific, inexplicable fact that this particular person, out of everyone, became different from everyone else, that was never a conscious decision. Something beneath the surface made it. From signals you never received consciously, from patterns assembled before you could articulate a preference, from a system built not for happiness, not for compatibility, not for your 5-year plan, but for survival, for connection, for finding someone worth staying near in a world that was never safe or guaranteed. And somehow, through all the noise and randomness of a life, your brain found someone and locked on, made them matter in a way that other people don't, made them distinct from the background of every other person who ever walked through the same room. Not because you decided, because something precise and ancient decided first, long before you caught up. Think about the most unexpected person you've ever had real feelings for. The one who made no logical sense. The one who didn't match a single thing on whatever list you had, consciously or not. You didn't choose that. It chose you. And maybe that's the most human thing there is. The fact that the experiences that change us most completely are usually the ones we never saw coming and never would have planned. So here's what's worth sitting with. If love, the force that shapes who we become, who we stay near, what we build, what we lose, what we carry for the rest of our lives, if that was never fully in our hands to begin with, what does it mean to fall for someone? And what does it mean that part of you was already gone before you even knew their name?